people are scattered, like stars in the galaxy. What are we? What do we stand for?
Okay. So yeah, again, thank you for being able to speak with me. It's an honor, it's a pleasure. Um,
We'll
so
find out if it's an honor.
okay, I'll let you know. I'll let you
We'll
know.
reserve that judgment for later.
I'll let you know. Yes, I wanted to start off with the Mandalorian season 3. I was so pleasantly surprised to see that your name and Latif's names were in the top billing as lead cast members. I wanted to start there. How did that feel to kind of see your name up there like that?
Pretty neat, that they they get to choose whatever I'm billed as, So for me, I don't know. Like those kind of things. I mean, as I've gotten older, I try to find less like woohoo moments like those, because those are things that I have no control over. But it was pretty neat, anyways. It's Star Wars, and it's everything to me in that sense. Like this was the beginning of the mythology, and my love for mythology in general was Star Wars. So, uh, yeah, I mean, like I try not to sit with those things because it takes my feet off the ground a little bit, but I do love it. Um, you know, for me, the biggest thing is those on set that I work with daily. Um, if I have their respect, like Simon Jays, he's the greatest cameraman here. Like he brought the Steadicam from London pretty much, and has done some amazing stuff. So like when you get those guys giving you respecting you enough to like do things, that's when I get a big hit. That's when I'm like, I made it. But it is pretty cool. And for me, the best part about it, and I'm glad you asked that question because I don't think I thought about it until you really said it like that. Um, like people sent it to me and it mattered to them. People that I don't personally know. And I've already loved the Star Wars fans, as I was one of them. I still am. So to see that it mattered to them and it didn't have to matter to them, that's a big deal for sure.
That's really touching because we did a social media post about that, and the comments that were flooding in support of you and how cool it was to see your name with the concept art there is just it was really endearing. So I feel
That's my favorite part of it, is that it was with the concept art. So like, Doug Chang and the team, Michelle, who works with Doug, she, like, if I'm having a rough day, she's like a magical happy fairy who appears for me and just kind of like supports me. So being there in that was pretty cool. Like, oh, this is Doug Chang stuff. Like, this is his crew, the team's done this. That's when I'm like, oh man, you guys are cool as heck.
that's really cool. And yeah, you're speaking about people that you see on set. I'm curious, this season kind of marked a little bit of a change in terms of the creative team. Rick Famuyiwa has stepped in as executive producer, and then you have different directors like people like Rachel Morrison. I'm
Oh yeah.
wondering, how did working on season 3 for you compare to working on the previous seasons?
um Rick I was familiar with, and it's funny because my trust was built with him, because when you're working and you're trying to portray something, you really have to trust those who are watching to be able to incorporate what you're doing into the bigger vision. That's what a director's job is, to tell the story. Mine is to tell Manda gets to tell Din's story, and all these things. And so when you have these so many, like, this is an anomaly as far as storytelling goes, because the lead character is told by many, not
Hmm.
one. And so having to have faith with those that you're working with is a big deal. So you find those, like, I make it a point to go find, the Isaacs, the Peters, the uh Bryce found me actually when we started. She came up, fist bumped me, was like, 3 generations. And I was like, yeah, I have no idea what you mean. And then it like, because I was never good at math. And then I was like, oh, oh, I get it. Oh, we'll get there, son. but like with Rick, the amazing thing was, there's a moment when I'm fighting the mud horn and the kid saves me. And there's what he told me, he's like, this is a moment where you're becoming like the knight. This is your knighthood. And I was like, come on, that's a big moment. Because I was like, why am I pulling out this blade? There's no way it's gonna hurt everything else I've tried has failed. And I'm, like I'm doing that moment. And he said, no, this is where you become a knight. And then he showed me, and I went, oh man, how talented are you? And then later on, he let it be known that we played basketball against each other in high school. And so then we had this incredible connection. So like,
wow.
I was like, first of all, I learned to trust him through his vision. And he, like, it's just a lot like, especially first season, because I was like, I want this to be everything I want it to be. And amazingly, it exceeded my expectations. So having Rick come in, and he's just so cool. He knows how to put his vision on something without taking you as an actor out of it. Often, like Hitchcock used to say, they're cattle, and just, make them do what you want about actors. And Ford very much, he wasn't that type, but he spoke like he was. And so with Rick, it's, I'll say to him, like, I had this idea to be like, cool, show me. Because it's acting. It's not, whenever telling. His job is to tell the story. Mine is to act it. And so to have that confidence of freedom, like I can go do it, and then he'll make the adjustments, or he'll say, so this is what we're looking for in this. Most of the time, he just gives an adjustment that makes his vision go. So I'm excited, honestly, to do that. And then you get to work with Rachel, who's cinematography before this. She's in the room next to mine, and she hears me working out, and she's like, did you have a punching bag in there? I was like, oh yeah. I try to get here 2 hours early every time so that I can, make sure that my body's awake and I've done what I can do. And she's like, oh, I was doing a boxing movie. And all of a sudden we're connecting on these other things. And I had introduced myself a little earlier, just, said, hey, look, this is what I know about working on this, stick to your guns and have faith in your vision. It got you here. Don't question it now. And, whatever, like she needs to hear that from me. But I just wanted her to know, hey, I'm here for you. I'm here to tell your story. And she came over, started talking about boxing. She's like, I got to work out with you. And it turns out we both surf, and just a really a very cool person. And she'd given me a book at the end of the season, and written me a note, something that clearly she hopefully saw in me, but read in me, like, that I want, which was, she said, I never realized how much you can convey in a picture without speaking, like in a moving picture without speaking. And I was like, so when you ask that question about, hey, how do we go about, how does it work every season? Because we do change. I go from working with first season Deb Chow, Rick Famuyiwa, Taika Waititi, Bryce, Dave Filoni, and then the next season, it's a Peyton Reed, it's Rick again, Rodriguez, who's just a great human being, whose support for art comes out in whomever he speaks to, in how he what do you call it, encourages you to be artist. So yeah, I mean, I'd go on forever, but You're going to find out. Long stories don't become short with me. But
Okay.
Throughout this process, if you look at every season, every episode, they've had a genre that they had chosen, whether it's obvious or not. So like episodes or chapter 6, The Prisoner, is a heist film. In episode 2, it's kind of like a knighting of, Mando, and there's all these different themes. Dave's The Jedi is, a samurai film, and it has a lot of mythological things to it. And then there's a gangster film with John's episode in season 2. And for me as an actor, I've worked on episodic, and where it's not cookie cutter, but it can be if you don't have a director who's buying into it. Like, what am I going to put my vision on? And or the producers allow them to have the freedom. So finding out these different genres that each one is going to work in is really fun for me. It doesn't become formulaic for me. And so I'm allowed to do what, John and Dave intended with Mando from the beginning, and watch this evolution of a singularity of that nomadic, iconic Western cowboy to a father, even if it's a reluctant father, or a fearful father who finds his growth and evolution to be limitless because of this kid, that kid right there.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. And how do you do that without being heavy-handed like I am right now? How do you have the fun of it and the joy of it? But for me, it is that process of taking Mando and then saying, hey, this is and having a Peter or a Isaac, how do they work with that? Do they look at me more as like a puppet? Like, here, just do what I want. Like Taika has some of that in him. Like, just do this. Trust the picture I want to paint. I need less of you and just more of what I want. And you're like, okay. And then you go with like a Rick who's like, show me and let me just smooth out your edges. And then, you have Peter who's just fascination with all this and joy of it. And that's the other thing is, I don't know that we've had somebody other than Bill Burr who wasn't a fan of Star Wars. And so you're constantly being fed the reason why this is important. And it's because we all have this deep love of the stories that we're telling. And it's never about one. Like it was never just about Luke or Obi or Princess Leia or Han Solo. I mean, the brilliance of Mr. Lucas's presentation was it was inclusive before inclusive was a word we carried so heavily. He brought in a Wookiee and an Ewok and a Jawa and a Twi'leks and Admiral Akbar and Bosk, and made it okay to be different and still be strong and powerful. And at some point you have to acknowledge the brilliance, like the genius. It's not just a movie. It's like he did his job in a way that was so creative you didn't know. And it reminds me of The Usual Suspects, Kaiser Sose, and he did his job, and you didn't realize he was telling you a story the whole time. And that's like you walk away from these things and you go, oh my God, like I look at my grandfather and the stories he got to tell, and the reason why it was so important to so many isn't because of anything other than the empowerment that was given to you as an individual to do the right thing in the toughest moments, whether you were good always or not. And that's what Lucas did with this. And that's what I love about Star Wars. While Mando, the Mandalorian, it's about the kid more than anything, and we're all just kind of fashioning the story that is his journey. And I love that. Like it's a freedom that keeps you grounded. And as an audience member, you could follow anybody you want. You can follow Cara Dune, you can follow Bo-Katan, you can follow you can like Moff Gideon. I don't. But there's reasons to I don't know, get behind it. And it's an incredible life moral tale.
No, I find it I resonate with everything you're saying, and I find it really interesting they use the word inclusive, because I agree. I think George Lucas embed that sense of inclusivity in the original Star Wars, and I love the fact that the way you're talking about your collaboration as a filmmaker with another filmmaker like Rick or Rachel or whoever, it feels so inclusive. I think that adds a lot as an audience member to know how much you as a filmmaker, as an actor, are bringing to the performance. And I think that can definitely be seen on the screen.
Yeah, I mean that's amazing to hear. And honestly, like what I've gotten to a point in my career, my life, where I understand what I can control and what I can't. And so once I do it, I have to have faith and trust that we're gonna accomplish what we want. If we don't, we don't. We'll know. We'll hear about it. As some previous directors have. I think the great thing about this is if I don't think it's all about me or my character that I'm doing, it gives me a freedom that, I don't know that everybody gets. Like when you're watching a show and you can see the person's face the whole time. It's easy to me. It seems very easy to feel like that's the most important thing versus the story you're telling. And that's why I love Lucas. It's such an easy word to throw out nowadays, but he really is a genius at that, at telling a story that we want to hear, that we need to hear at a time when we need it most, without telling you it's a story. Like, this is dead time. I'm going to watch, this show. Oh man. And it's not even, the funny thing is, it's not because I relate to Mando as a male. Because what I found out once season 1 was done, a mom reached out to me and was like, my kid loves you. Will you, is there any chance you could, give her a shout out or, text me something, whatever. And I was like, let's, get him on. Let's go. Let's, So in walks her kid, takes off the helmet, and it's a young girl. And I was reminded immediately of the freedom that this helmet gave me as an actor. Mm-hmm. It also gives you as a fan. And I realized, although now we know he's, Pedro, it doesn't matter to the fans, like old or young. And so the translation, the true everyman that people used to call my grandfather, that presentation of a flawed human who does things, the anti-hero, really. That's what Mando is. And the best thing about Mando is that Mando can be female, male, non-binary, whatever it is, because you put the helmet on and nothing matters. There's a freedom to it. And that's pretty awesome. Like, Filoni and John did so many things with this that were so smart. Like, hey, we want to do Boba Fett, but we're not going to do Boba Fett because whether they know it or not, they were never going to be able to satisfy my Boba Fett. Not the character that I ended up living with years after he fell in a Sarlacc pit. Like, he was my guy. Like, that's who I played with. So you were never going to be able to fulfill what my imagination gave me. You know what I mean? Like, and I think in a lot of ways, storytelling Now I'm gonna get on a soapbox. It'll be short though. Storytelling in movies, we wanted to tell the graphic and really, like, and we got some violence, and it was like, oh God, it's not pretty. And it's important that we had those moments. There is also something to be said for the long, slow kiss, fade to black next day, because what I'm going to imagine is different than what my wife's going to imagine next to me, but it's going to have the same value. And you didn't need to show me what they did as and I'm not being a prude, because there's a place for everything, because art is important, whether it's comedy or whatever. Like, we have to push boundaries, but to push boundaries just to push boundaries is weakness in my mind. Tell stories, that's a different thing. And that's what I do love about Star Wars, is having a helmet on and left in a I wish, on some levels, I wish they had never taken the helmet off, because it was a courageous to go about this character, and the anticipation of what it was. We could, I think as an audience member, it would have been a great lesson, and maybe we don't want to teach lessons or whatever, and we got to feed I heard on set once, and I hated it, which was, we've got to give the audience the payoff. And I just never felt like that was an important thing. I felt like the other thing that we were doing, which was telling this story and not making this important, was better. But they've done a great job. I have no qualm. They went this path. I wanted to go where Robert Frost went, So that's, yes, I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you definitely did. And I feel like that just, to me at least, signals how powerful of a character he is. The fact that, that interaction that you had with that young fan,
thank you.
Anyone can envision themselves in the helmet, and from a little kid to, someone so much older and so much in between. I am curious. So, you spoke about playing a character, and other actors like Pedro and Lateef playing the character. It's incredible as an audience member, the consistency that you guys achieve, and how fluid that performance is. I imagine that's an incredible challenge to get that consistency across actors, but also an incredible opportunity to kind of collaborate on a character. Do you mind speaking a little bit about that?
Yeah, this is, and you can see it in probably some other interviews I've said, but I go about it this way, and I've gone about it from the beginning when Lateef and I were trying to figure out what we were going to do, and that was kind of what, John was like, I want you to watch Yul Brynner and Westworld and Terminator, as you approach this as an actor, like, because it's really important that we start with this almost mechanical version, and by the end of it, we'll show a little bit more fluidity to him. So what I tried to do physically in the costume was give him, like Brenner, his top and bottom don't, my approach to acting isn't method. It never worked for me. I feel like I pulled myself away from the story to go into my own memories, and the audience therefore doesn't get to have their own reaction to something. They have to have mine. So what I try to do is allow for the moment or the place I'm in to fulfill it. And they've given me everything to succeed in that venue, from the volume down just to the people I get to work with. So that said, I can change, I hope, as an actor, I change where a person's center is. And if, like, I'll watch a person physically, and, my grandfather tend to almost walk through his shoulder.
Yeah.
And, like, to me, people who are, I don't know if the word's right, but crazy as a character, I tend to think their center's outside of them. And so that's why we feel uncomfortable around people like this, because all of a sudden it's not here and then pushed out. It's out here. And I don't know, like so with Mando, finding where his center was and watching his center move as a character, by the end, you might see, Mando, when I'm in costume, this subliminally, and I watch it with actors and I talk to other actors, and I say, did you intend to, was that something to remind you to feel and you happen to touch your heart, or you were in your guts because you had a visceral reaction to something, or whatever, you were up in your head a lot, and these thinkers, like people do it without thinking about it. And so watching, playing with that center and watching it change with Mando, and we change it all day throughout our conversations, but like certain people just carry it in a certain way, and being able to do that was the way I approached it, and that was my thought process, was I want him to be a mirror for you to bounce off of. So how do I work with Latif with that? And what does Latif do? Latif is so powerful in his balance and strength, and I have a different flow physically, and Pedro has a completely different ruggedness to him. And so my answer to it was, hey, you do what you do really well and make sure it's consistent and simplified. I'm going to do the same thing. Pedro's going to do it. And then they can make him what he is. So if we're doing that, I think that is how the freedom gets there. Because if I'm thinking, how would ... do this? Or, then I'm not where I need to be, which is interacting with the character, the environment, whatever it is. And then you lose out as a fan. And so that's my thought process going in. And that's how we've worked. Like Latif and I will, strategize on, because we try to keep him Western. We try to keep that ruggedness, that he's not a superhero.
Right.
He's us. And how do we function in these moments in a way that's beneficial to us? So that's how I approach it. I think that's pretty much how we've all come to. I'll call Latif if we're on two different units. He'll FaceTime me. He'll be like, watch this. If I do this, is this too karate? And I'll be like, no, man, I love it. Like, bring all that power. And if you watched episode 2, and this is a spoiler alert if you haven't watched this, there's a moment where Mando's in a fight and he's fighting these creatures in the cave. And I was there and I don't remember seeing it, but they were working with he's fight. There's so many, and he comes and he takes one of the legs out, and rather than use like the fire or something, or do some kind of karate, he throws the most beautiful overhand right, and it looks amazing. So like JJ Dash and I was stuck coordinating. It's either like JJ or Scott Lang who's in those costumes, and he throws this thing, and it looked like he just devastated him. And it was so rugged and so Western to me. I was like, oh, and we were at the premiere. They showed the second episode at the premiere, and he was right behind me in the row behind me. And I, like, seeing it put together, I literally was like, oh my God. No! I was like, I'm fanning out. Like, I'm full fanboy right now. So it was pretty awesome. Like we had an amazing time. Do you have a time limit on this?
Yeah, I don't know why that just came up. I'm sorry about that.
No, I just wanted to warn you because I talk too much. And I have a freedom of time. So if I need to hurry, tell me.
No, not at all. And I don't want to keep you. I find that incredible how much thought goes into the nuances of it, and how as an audience member, you're not necessarily noticing it, but that almost speaks to the work that you're doing. The fact that we're processing it, but not explicitly. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would say this. I mean, I have my responsibility. Latif has his, Pedro has his. But John and Dave are so good. And they were so good at building our muscle memory and allowing us to feel like a contributor. So, it's like a good coach. That's what directors can be. Like we want to tell the story of, like I coach at this high school, Grant Soccer. I coach the girls' soccer program, and I want them to play this style, which is I want them to tell this story, and I want the other team to be affected by our, approach. That's what John does and Dave does. They do it incredibly well. They build our stamina, reaction, skill sets to be able to tell his story, their overarching story. The directors, their responsibility is to ensure that character does what he does naturally, without losing their vision. And the grips pulling the dolly, making sure that Mando looks the way he looks when he's walking in or in the fight, and then like Simon or Murph or Dom on focus, or Jeff in lighting, like oh no, I caught a light, or I saw a reflection, we can't have this, or Jason or Justin in VFX. I bring their names up because we often forget or don't give them the credit that's due them. And your seamless viewership, and having that joy of that, it doesn't come from me. I do my job, and I do it to the best of my ability, and so does every single person, down to Thomas or Joey or Aaron, any of the ADs, PAs, any of them. My most consistent director is my first AD, Kim Richards, and she's unbelievable. And I've known her since she was what they call a SAG trainee. And now she's a first AD, and she runs this show, and she supports everybody. And she's dying to be a director, right? But at the same time, for the most part, everybody stays their lane and are supported to succeed. Some support or some succeed in spite of, any given moment not being supported. But I try every day to let them know that I may walk in the suit and put on the helmet, and the show may be called The Mandalorian, but The Mandalorian is us, not me, not anything else. It's we, not me. That's my thought. And so that seamlessness, and I honestly, I do appreciate it. I try to never take pride in anything I don't, but I do find a reward in knowing that everybody, and I have kids. I have a 24-year-old, 13, 15, and they go on the internet. I do not do this because I learned from my grandfather growing up in the Wayne family that, there's people who won't, and
right.
What can you do? So, but my kids will go on, and they will show me. They know what I will accept them showing me, because I'm like, look, if you go see bad things about me and then you go search it, you're going to be negatively affected. I can't stop you, really, but I really would appreciate you don't. And I assume they don't for the most part. But they do go find these people who are like, this is the Bible of who it is when it is in the costume. And I can tell you right now, they are so wrong. And I haven't seen one, not one, right? I think recently I saw one that was close. Not one has been right in their detail. And I love it though, but I love that we create this, oh, I know who it is. Like, it cracks me up. It really does. It's funny.
I love that. I love that collective sense there. Also, just honestly, the fact it's so endearing to hear you have that humility to point out, all the different people who are contributing. I I am curious though, given what you're saying there. I don't even know if you're allowed to say this for audience members. What percentage of the time would you say in season 3 are we seeing you as opposed to Pedro or Latif?
Ask me at the end of the season.
Okay.
I will say this. Will I say that? My thing is this. I know when I'm in it. I know every step of the way. And it's not because somebody else might not have, contributed in that moment. But I can physically tell you a detail that would tell you immediately when I'm in that suit.
Got it. So
But
something you would notice.
Oh yeah. And there's no question. Like, I'm not allowed to say, I guess. And I know that, like Lucasfilm would, their PR or whatever, this contractually, blah, blah, blah. And Disney the same way. But I think just as a participating fan, which I still am, not of myself, honestly. I mean it like in the story. The mystery of it is much better. Now, the other way to go about me trying to get credit and needing credit. And if anything, I knew it before, but if anything, this 3 seasons plus Boba has taught me is that chasing that credit isn't worth your emotions. So if I know, then that has to be enough for me. It's that simple. It has to be enough for me.
And that speaks to that seamlessness that we were, mentioning as well.
Yeah.
No, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me. I know the time's running out here. I did want to say, as the interview is winding down, I see you have an Arsenal thing in the back, so you must be pretty happy this season. I'm a United fan, so I'm sorry, but
no, so is my oldest is an Arsenal fan. I mean, if you have more time, I have more time. We can re-up.
Okay, yeah.
I don't mind. I'm not in a hurry. But I mean, I'm gonna tell you right now. They are why I coach soccer, football, I call it. They are why my daughters. Sorry, somebody's calling on me.
Oh no, you're
phone.
good.
I don't need that. I have the relationship I do with my daughters because I wanted my kids to have a similar group around them that I did growing up because I feel like it was valuable and good. And where did I get that group of playing sports? And so it didn't matter if you were white, black, brown, whatever, because we were going to do something greater than ourselves. It wasn't about us. And that's what.
Yeah. Perfect. So I think, we were talking about soccer again. I think drawing a parallel between that and what you're talking about in regards to Star Wars, that it being a collective there.
Oh yeah.
I did want to ask you, so you've spoken about how in the past in other interviews you're classically trained, you learn not only how to act but to dance, to fence, to project your voice, to shoot. I'm really curious, what is the most unexpected skill or quality that you've drawn upon in working on The Mandalorian? Something that you didn't think you'd end up using or needing, but a skill or a quality that came up and was unexpectedly useful.
It's funny because I think it's something that every teacher I had or whatever has begged me to have. And what it is for lack of a better word, it's faith or trust, simplicity. Because especially when I began, I wanted to tell you everything. Oh, here's a face. Oh, I'm crying. It's there. I'm like, oh my God. And people would tell me time and time again, look, you don't even have to have a tear to make the audience sad. I'd be like, oh yeah, you do. You're wrong. I'm like, I'm talking to like 20-year veterans who've, and I'm like, okay. So in theater school, I mean, I was trained for theater. The idea that dance or even, singing, those two things became so integral to Mando. And I didn't recognize it till I really was working, and I realized the fluidity of him, of me, of John slowing me down. People are like, oh, you copy your grandfather. I'm like, no, it's just not the way I go about things. And what it is it's a realization of genes, but how do those genes affect each of us? There's moments, he's 6'5", 250. So there's nothing I'm going to do that's going to copy him necessarily, because I'm 6 foot, 170. But if somebody slows me down, because I remember my granddaddy is this kind of bigger than life goofball, not this taciturn, simple, I could just stand here and stare at you and make you melt guy. And what John and Dave really honed in me was that simplicity of, like this, when I'm not covered, I can do this. Hold on, bear with me for 2 seconds. I'll show you something I learned on set. So when I'm like this, oh, good hair. When I'm like this, I can turn and look and you get it. If I do this, it is so big a movement that you think there's, this big thing.
Right.
Whereas if I'm talking to somebody right here, normally I do this, but in this helmet, I look through my nose. So wherever my nose points is where I look, right? And then if somebody's here, I go. Now, if there's something big going on, that's a big thing. And then we're dealing with a camera. So if I turn too far, it's too far. But it's like, somebody slams my glass down in the bar. But if I do that, if I do those movements here, oh, I'm startled. But in the helmet, there's something to it. And so movement class, which was my dance class, understanding the subtlety, understanding why we have steps in the salsa, things like that, or in the Charleston, understanding those things really came to the forefront of something I hadn't been doing in TV or film to this point. And it was the idea of something I had briefly looked at and studied, which was kabuki, which is, you wear the mask, the audience can't see anything. Every movement means something. So like with samurais, they pull that blade. Every movement has to be a kill move, and it has to have a certain structure. Cowboys, if you put your hand on the pommel of that gun, you got to pull it. You're not threatening. Like these gunslingers, they don't threaten. They say, and they give you the time. And if you don't do whatever it is, boom, I'm here. And so every movement has meaning. Now, when I was younger, I thought that meant like I moved to my right and I'm doing like you're almost like you're detailing. It's not that. It's if I put on my shoe, I put on my shoe.
Mm.
How I put on my shoe is the acting part. If I'm mad, I pull it on. If I'm happy, I'm like, there's a joy, there's a lightness, there's an airiness. And this is what I learned right after I got out. My wife continues to teach me it. She's an amazing actress, but also coaches. And then we both learned it from this amazing Russian guy, Nikolai Guzov. I got to give him credit. But radiation, and is something my mom used to talk about with my grandfather and all these things. But in order to radiate, you have to believe it's enough. Whatever you're doing is enough. And that you can turn it up. So, John saying, I need your stillness. You really have to have faith that sitting there and staring and feeling whatever you feel, living in the moment of, with the environment of, 3 stormtroopers on either side with your guns out, looking at Werner Herzog, saying, I like those odds. Those things you have to have. It's like, for me, talk about one of the greatest acting lessons and challenges I've ever had. It never ceases, because if I relax, first of all, that costume is unforgiving as far as looking at. Like, if you look at it and you've crumpled in the middle, you could see it. There are moments that I'm like, oh my God. So I'm on the whole time, like, okay, there's my mom's so happy in heaven, God rest her soul. She's like, oh, he's standing up straight. Thank God. Keep your shoulders back. And so, yeah, I mean, that's my greatest thing that I took beyond the projection of voice and having, my centers, is that radiation of the moment, allowing my relationship to you to translate through my eyes from somewhere. It can't just be here, because then this dies. So how do I live with this moment without telling you I'm, whatever, and boom. And there it is. To me, it's one of the greatest gifts. And I try to translate it into everything I'm doing, unless the character really calls for something different, because it is those simple things. You watch a De Niro, like for me, Keanu, visually, his movements all have meaning. And I'm not just talking like John Wick. I'm talking about like, and I was one of the first guys, like, oh, Keanu's, and then, you get to actually learn the craft and you go, wow, his subtlety is unreal. Same thing with like Brendan Fraser, this dude who I've always thought was great. People had very, critics had very little love for. That's why I do love critics. Their adulation of, Pedro and all his great work. And Pedro is beyond exceptional. But it reminded me again what my mom always told me about the critics. And it was from what's his name's speech about, it's not the critic who counts, it's the doer of deeds, the man in the arena. That speech. Because they speak with such knowledge, and it reminds you that their knowledge is only whatever's being fed to them by who's ever feeding it. And so, hearing them, like, I know who's in the suit at this moment or whatever, and hearing them, go, blah, blah, blah. It honestly is heartening to hear how great it is, but it makes me laugh because I go, oh, this is what misinformed presentations do. And it allows people, Star Wars takes on a much bigger view in the world, which is, reminds us that, even in, not in the storytelling part, but in the talking about their storytelling, we're reminded to always take it with a grain of salt, whatever we hear, good or bad, because we so that's, it's very cool in that way, like, because it keeps you humble, but at the same time, you're like, oh yeah, I can't take them 100% seriously because they don't know the 100% of the story.
Right.
So it's fun. But and then you get these fans who knew, I don't even know how they knew. And they knew before the first season was even finished. And I was pretty impressed. Like that, like to me, and that's the loveliness of Star Wars, is knowing that, you know, Bullock is doing this thing and Prowse is doing this and James Earl Jones, and the appreciation of it, not the dismissal of anybody. That's pretty cool. Like, I don't know any other franchises that do that. There's too often you watch, you know, like for me, I love the Marvel movies. I have fun watching them or whatever. But too often the credit is given when it's not due. And like, to me, there is an important reason why I never ever will take credit for being a stuntman, because I've never been one. And if I am, Disney, you owe me for every time I hit the ground, every time I did anything physical, because you didn't pay me. You get to choose to credit me however you want. But the fact of the matter is, I'm not a stuntman. I was never trained for that. I'm just a physical guy who grew up athletic, whose physicality informs most of his characters, even if they're weak. So if I can do it on some level, I'll do it. But Lateef his craft is so good. I wouldn't want to denigrate what he does. Ryan Watson, stunt coordinators, like JJ, like that fight in that cave, it was an explosion of emotion. I loved every minute of it as a character, watching that someone else do that. And, you know, it feeding Mando's need to redeem. And like, we've all had moments, I don't care if they're little or big, where we wanted to redeem ourselves. And if you haven't, start fucking living, because you need to. That's where I'm like, oh my God, I love it. So why would I steal somebody else's? As an artist, that'd be like me taking something you write, or you know, something you create, and being like, yeah, that's mine. Like, that's disgusting to me. Like, there is nothing more despicable in art than cannibalism. Either you give credit to all who are due, or you don't give credit to anyone. You don't take credit. You don't. That's my take.
No, I agree with that. And I think everything you're saying holds a lot of relevance, not only for Star Wars, but even more broadly in terms of art and storytelling and filmmaking. I did want to ask, so every Wednesday, these, you know, next few weeks, we're getting these new Mandalorian episodes. I'm curious what your ritual is. Do you tend to watch them when they come out? Do you watch them with family, with friends? What are your kind of Wednesday Mando routine look like?
Well, my wife has a vested interest because she works with me nonstop, and gives me, I mean, obviously she's my wife, so the poor girl has to put up with me, and she must love me because she wouldn't otherwise. But as a coach, she's incredibly her creativity and influence is down to the finest detail, and she knows what I watch for, and she tells me things I should watch for or whatever. So she and I will watch the show. My kids, I don't think they care. I mean, I think because it's me, it makes it harder for them to enjoy, because they know too much. Like they know the wizard's behind the curtain and he's not real. And so I think on a lot of levels, I screwed that up for them. Now, I do know that, you know, like my youngest Lola, she watches it. But I don't want to watch it with them, because that's got to make it more awkward. Like, I'm like, you guys don't have to watch it with me. And they're like, okay, cool. And then I find out later that they watch it, you know. But I'll watch it with my wife. Like, we'll go and watch it. I don't watch it the second it comes out. I usually I don't have the, I mean, usually I'm asleep by like 9:30, 10 o'clock. I'm old. I got kids. I got to go to school. I got to coach. I got so much going on. Um, so I'll watch it after we drop the kids off. We'll find some time in there and we'll drop it in, and we'll walk away from each other, and then we'll come back and be like, because she knows if I talk about it right then, I'll be self-critical and it's not going to be beneficial. I need to get through that and then go. So, like it's good. And we find really, great ways to talk about it, whether it's a mythology point that we were like, that was really well done. Or, she worked with John on Jungle Book. And so she knows John very well. And she'll be like, oh, that's so John right there, that moment or something. Or she'll know what happened that day and she'll remember it. And in the moment, I might have thought it was a big deal. But usually I move on from things pretty quickly. I'm not somebody to hold on to things. But she'll remember it and she'll be like, oh, that was that day that this happened. I'm like, oh, wow. Oh, that came off better than I thought then. And so like, it's interesting in that sense, because we do review it tactically. We also review it as fellow storytellers, actors, and just as Star Wars fans. And then I got my brothers who call me and they're like, what this? Why did you do? What's going on with this? And da, 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 da. And that's fun. Not, because I have 5 brothers. So, the good thing is that I'm almost 100% busy. Like when we finished season 4, we finally go back where my one set of my grandparents are from, Sicily and Calabria. So I got to take the family there. That was like our first family vacation, really. And it was beautiful. And then there's a lot of people out there screaming to, make changes in this world. And I thought, how do we do that? Like we can talk about it, but I think talk is ineffectual. And I know politics is never going to get done what we need in each community because it's very specific to us. So the only way it gets done is the same way my mom taught me as a kid, which was, every weekend we go to Skid Row and we would feed the homeless. Like that was what we did. Like, and I forgot about it, honestly, like whether it was the grind of, first 2 seasons, I worked 7 days a week because I would bartend because I was on a daily contract. I didn't ever have any guarantees. I wasn't, like they would be, even though I worked every day of the season, I was still had to sign a new contract every day. So I was never assured anything. I was fine with it. I put my name to that thing and I gave them everything I had every day because I was taught the right things. And so I was like, how do I give back? How do I do it in a way that's not, I don't know. Sanctimonious is the only word I can think of. And I fucking hate it. I hate when I see people virtue signaling everybody because, I don't know how you live. I don't know how my neighbor lives. I don't know what's going on. Even if I think I do, I don't.
Right.
And I don't know their experience. And 100% I have advantages that nobody else had. I get it, all those things. So how do I do something that benefits? What do I have that I can help benefit? So I went and I took the available coaching job at a local public high school and at a program that I knew nothing about, but it's literally a couple blocks away, and started coaching Grant high school soccer. Mind you, I didn't get in like the other coaches. I didn't have an off season. We started 9 days after we were in our first game after I got him, and they were like, you're never going to have a team. And you might get a varsity team, blah, blah, blah. Well, I got 62 kids to come out for this. So I could have done 3 teams, and next year we will, but it was the greatest thing I've ever done. And while I went to give back to a community that was around me in the way that I thought I could benefit them, which was the same way I thought I'd benefit my kids, which was teach them how to work within a team, how to overcome obstacles in a safe place that were hard on. Difference between an injury and pain, and how do we overcome those moments and all those things. That was my drive in this whole thing. they taught me more than, anything I ever gave them. Like I gave them the ability to have a season, but you want to learn about what advantages you have. Go work with people who need you. Like they needed a coach. And so their drive to be great. I told them in the beginning, I said, look, I'm not your average coach. You don't have to come and do what I say. Like that's not how we're going to work. I'm here to support your success. And what you give will be what you reap. And I'm going to give you a structure to go succeed, but I'm also open to anything you know. So if you know something and can prove it to me, then do it. And this is things that I learned from Rick. These are things I learned from acting, not just playing basketball or football, track, baseball. This is things that I learned. And so I go out there, and then these kids, I find out, like some of them, their parents won't let them go to away games because they're girls. And the cultural things, like I grew up with you. I don't think I ever missed a practice. If I missed a practice, it was because I was in the hospital. And that was it. Like I never missed a practice. And so I had a kid who couldn't come back after the Christmas break because she had to work so she could pay for her grandmother's funeral.
Oh my gosh.
So, now I'm about to do a girl, it's a ladies program. So they have less than every, male program around them for whatever reasons, I don't care. So I'm going to balance. I'm actually going to not balance. I'm going to go well beyond what all the other programs have. And I'm going to benefit them because they deserve it. And I sell it by saying, hey, look, women's footy is the fastest growing business on television. There's nothing bigger. And so what we're about to see is, first of all, we've already seen the success, so you can buy into it, as an audience member. And if you watch them play, they generally don't lay on the ground a lot, like my favorite teams sometimes do. So it's not unwatchable. The commercial break, so it's a fluid thing. And if you understand, like you do, and I'm going to say this, and it's a comedian did this bit, and it's so spot on, which is, people always say in soccer, they don't score enough. I would like to point out that in football, American football, they've given 1.6. In basketball, they give 1 and 3 or 2 and 3. So if we break this down, blah, 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 and he starts talking about it. He's like, 21 to 14 sounds much better than 3-2, but it's 3-2.
3-2.
And it's so funny. You're like, oh my God. I actually was saying to somebody, I'm like, that would not to rub salt in the wound, but I'm like, because they were telling me, I'm like, Liverpool just put 49 on Man U. And in an upset of great proportions, in my opinion. Cassie leaving is a big deal. I mean, that's why. And I understand that as an Arsenal fan, because those, Xhaka red cards previously
they
killed us.
Yeah, right.
They're so inopportune. Anyways, I thought it was a little cynical giving them a red card, but whatever. So I went out and did this thing, and then all of a sudden I'm hearing, I've lived over a half century. So I'm hearing these cultural things that I thought we were well beyond in 2023. But, we're talking about the greatest part about America is the immigration that still comes here. And yes, we have to be smart about all those things. Don't get me wrong. But immigration is, came over on a boat, built themselves up. By the time my grandfather was 17, he was a contractor, not a laborer, a contractor, owned his own business. He contributed. They provided their my father was a Navy pilot. My uncle was Air Force. My grandfather was in the Army, fought in World War I. That's how old my parents and grandparents are. And they brought their culture in. and then they assimilated, and hearing that this is still a process is heartening to me, because it's what makes us great, and it's what makes, to tie it all back in, it's what makes Star Wars great, because it is an assimilation of cultures and ideas, whether it's, it's not done with that heavy hand of I am right and I am virtuous. It's just a story, and we get to enjoy it, and it sinks into us regardless of if we wanted to or not.
Yeah, and I think that's especially important for younger audiences, right, where they don't necessarily realize how some of these deeper themes are setting in. Yeah. No, I have to say thank you so much for speaking with me. I mean this at the bottom of my heart, that you are incredibly humble and endearing and really lovely to talk to.
Thank you. I appreciate it, man. I do.
Thank you. Yeah, best of luck with everything. Best of luck with your season. Best of luck with the season. I think Arsenal will probably win the title. So I
was worried. I was worried at Christmas break. I said, I'm really, or the January break. I was like, I think they're too young, and they're not deep enough to withstand injuries, which is what the second half of the season has brought for the last 7 years.
Wow, yeah.
And knock on wood, we're getting healthy. So if we do sustain any, we have some wiggle room, very little, but we have it. So I'm proud of them. They're quite inspiring and amazing. And it's funny, by the way, I'm, meeting you, I looked at you, and one of the first things I thought was, oh, he kind of looks like Martin Odegaard.
I'll take that as a compliment.
Oh man, he's a stud.
He's a great player.
He's
yeah. And then now you got Gabriel Jesus back.
He's back.
Yeah, finally. And everyone thought that was going to derail your season, and it didn't.
Eddie filled in, and Saka and Martinelli, they get credit, but I honestly, they're going to cost the club a lot of money shortly.
Yeah, no, but it'll be worth it. It'll be worth
100%. And I hope they understand it's worth it.
Yeah, right. Well, I don't know. Are you going to Star Wars Celebration in a few weeks?
As of right now, no. I know a bunch of everyone else is. No one, like obviously I wasn't allowed out of the cave until Celebration this past year. So I couldn't do conventions and things like that contractually, because they wanted to really establish some things. I think them inviting me is done because they've already done it once. And then I didn't seek out anything. I know I'm going to the Netherlands to do Echo-based charity function, raise some money out there. That's going to be amazing in May.
That's cool.
I'm going out to do Steve Byrne, is an incredible comic. And if you can, go watch his last late night on Prime Video, please, because it's hilarious. And he and I played opposite each other, and were cut out of a movie called Couples Retreat together, and have been friends because he's incredible. I'm doing his charity event for Mario Lemieux out in Pittsburgh in July. Those are things I know I'm going to go do. And then hopefully I'm going to go do this Netflix show shortly. And that should be awesome. So
that's
those
awesome.
Things I know of. So, and my wife's going to go out and do a movie too. So
you got a lot planned. Best of luck with that. Well, yeah, I brought a Star Wars Celebration. If you end up in England, try and catch a Gunners game.
I'm going on it. I'll do whatever I have to. I'm going to pull every string so I can take a tour of the Emirates. I mean, you have no idea. You gotta do it. Gunnership. I'm up at 4 if the game's at 5.
I know, yeah, because you're right. Yeah, I'm based in Chicago, so we don't need to wake up at the crack of dawn, but it's still early, still.
I will say this: I'm hoping to go back to C2E2 in August.
Oh, okay. We covered that.
Such a great time.
It is. It's a great time.
That was the first convention I was allowed to go to, actually.
Oh, really?
I had a great time. Great turnout. Rosario was there, so I had fun, and Mercedes. We had a great time. Really good time there. Yeah. So
maybe I'll see. We'll bump into each other in person there.
Yeah, we go do an interview there, or go over to Purple Pig and eat.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Thank you again. I again really appreciate it. Very grateful for you taking the time.
My pleasure. I thank you for even asking, man. I don't know why you did, but I appreciate it.
No, okay. Thank you so much. Yeah, best of luck with everything.
Thank you. You too. And you can have finish fourth. All right. It's okay,
I'll-
man. You can finish fourth.
I'll take fourth right now.
Do not
I'll
let
take fourth.
Tottenham. Do not let the Spurs in.
No. As a gunner, you can't have them get in. No.
No.
Well,
All right,
fingers
brother.
crossed.
Yeah. Thank you.